This is why I would never hire a stranger for a kid's birthday party. And if the photo's not bad enough, the mystery behind it is so much worse. And a reminder before I dive in that if you like all things spooky and true crime, check out my podcast. There's a link to it in my profile. So in the 1940s, the McLaren family in Houston, Texas was having a birthday party for their daughter, Rose. They hired a clown for the party, but an hour before the party started, they get a call from the company saying that the clown they hired was no longer available. They were going to send someone else in his place. And the parents are like, okay, fine, whatever. But then this man shows up to the party. And the kids are all terrified of him. No one really wants to take photos. The man stayed at the party for about 20 minutes and then just disappeared. But get this. After he left, the clown that they hired showed up to the party. And he apologized for being late. And the mother is like, what are you doing here? You canceled on us. And the clown's like, no, I didn't. And it was at that moment that one of the parents noticed that this little boy pictured here was missing. The little boy was never found, and the identity of this man remains a mystery even today.
Ambulance service, what's the address of the emergency?
Hi, I'm not sure. I've just met a man who...
What's the address, my love, first, please?
I am on Berkeley Road in Westbury Park.
Berkeley Road in Westbury Park. Okay, and whereabouts on that road are you? Just outside, or...?
The very bottom of the road. Basically, I heard a shouting in my garden. I came out and there's a gentleman shouting for help.
Okay, so he's in Berkeley Road, Westbury Park.
Yeah.
Bottom of the road. Okay, bear me a second.
Good.
Okay, so he's actually in the road, is he?
Yeah, he is, yeah. Mate, it's okay.
Okay, my love, tell me exactly what's happened.
I was in my garden having a cigarette and I heard a gentleman shouting from a distance away. I went out into my road to investigate and basically he's just shouting for help and...
Can you ask him what's happened?
I'm not sure what's happened. Excuse me, mate. Excuse me. Hello? Yeah. What's happened, please?
Somebody threw acid over there.
Someone threw acid over his face, apparently.
Did acid thrown over his face?
Yeah.
Okay, bear me a second. Is the attacker still nearby?
Is who did it to you, please?
My ex.
His ex.
All right, my love. Is she still there? Has she gone?
Is he or she still here?
I don't know.
He doesn't.
That's okay. That's all right, my love. Don't worry.
Yeah,
okay.
He's on the way.
So you had acid thrown over his face?
And body, yeah.
What's the location of the emergency?
Help me!
Yes, what address do you need help?
I'm not on an address, I'm on the road, on Myers Road! He's trying to kill me!
Which road are you on?
Myers Road in Oregon City!
Okay, do you have an address? Listen.
I'm gonna be late, come on, get a cop here now!
Okay, who's trying to kill you?
My husband! He's trying to kill my pickup truck!
Okay, what?
He's trying to kill me! Come on! He's trying to
And what kind of gun does he have? I need you to tell me wire and what.
On Glenn. I'm on Glenn. Squire.
Just a minute.
I'm walking. He shot me.
Okay, you're on Squire at Glenview Court?
He shot me
Okay, where did he shoot you?
in the chest.
In the chest?
He's over there.
On October 9, 2013, 37-year-old Daniel Van Sickle and his friend 36-year-old Sam Slack arrived at the Blue Springs State Park in Florida for a day of scuba diving. It's a beautiful location for this. The water is crystal clear. It's a relatively easy dive until you get down to about 60 feet or 20 meters when it narrows into some limestone crevasses and caves, which extend down to about 120 feet or 36 meters deep. But you're not supposed to be down in those caves if you're not cave certified. And Sam Slack was not cave certified. In fact, he was only an open water diver with very little experience. And as an open water diver, which is the first level of certification, you're not supposed to go below 60 feet, period. So when the men arrived, they actually had to sign paperwork stating that they would not go down into these caves or below 60 feet, period. But as soon as the two men got in the water, that is immediately what they did. They went straight down to the bottom at 120 feet, down into these tighter crevasses, down to the dark bottom. But everything went okay. They just explored down there for a few minutes before they decided they were going to head back up and explore some more of these limestone formations. However, on their way back up, once they got to about 80 or 90 feet, some 30 meters, Daniel looks over and sees Sam giving him the out of air sign. I have no air left. So Daniel swims over to him and he gives him his regulator so they can buddy breathe. Where normally you'd give your regulator up, they'd take a few breaths, they'd pass it back, you'd take a few breaths, and then you make an emergency ascent. However, after about 30 seconds, Sam was not giving Daniel the regulator back, and Daniel's motioning to him, hey, I need my air back. But Sam is pulling away. He's keeping it. He's not giving it back. So Daniel has to make the heartbreaking decision to fight Sam underwater for his air. And he gets a hold of it. He rips the regulator away from Sam and he kicks away from him and just beelines it for the surface without taking any decompression, safety stops, nothing. He just goes straight to the surface where he screams out to a maintenance worker, hey, call 911. And then bravely, he goes back down to get Sam. And he finds Sam floating on his back about 100 feet, some 33 meters under the water, just floating there lifelessly. And he grabs Sam, he brings him up to the surface where Daniel tries to give him mouth to mouth along with another maintenance worker. And they would call 911. Paramedics would arrive shortly after. But Sam could not be revived. He drowned there on that day. It was determined later that he had never opened his valve on his tank all the way. He just opened it a quarter turn. And if you're a scuba diver, you open that all the way and then a half turn back. And that's what prevented him from getting the air. At 10 p.m. on October 23, 2017, hundreds of people would gather at the Qinglong Temple in Malaysia to watch a Taoist guru perform an incredible feat of both physical and spiritual strength and endurance. 65-year-old Lim Ba had performed this stunt or ritual before, but despite that, his family had begged and pleaded with him to please never do it again, because it was very dangerous. What he was going to be doing was steaming himself alive. So there would be a fire lit on the ground, a wood fire. Above that, there would be a large steel cooking wok that would be filled with water, and above that there would be a little wooden platform that Lim would sit on, and that platform would have vegetables on it that would be cooked by the steam while he was in there. On top of that, they would lower this giant metal capsule over the top of him so he's completely encapsulated in there. It's like he's sitting in a pressure cooker. Now, despite it being so dangerous and his family's pleas, He was very intent on showing his loyal fans that anything can be achieved with the proper amount of discipline and spirituality. So he was going through with it. And at 10 o'clock, they lit this fire under the walk. When the water began to steam, Lim climbed up on the wooden platform with the vegetables, and they used this like pulley system to lower this vat over the top of him, completely sealing him in with this steam. Everything was going okay for about the first half an hour until, to me, it looks like on the video, the fire underneath him gets a little bit bigger than it should have got. And then you start to hear screaming and pounding from the inside of this vat. People obviously immediately realize there's a problem and they rush to use this winch system to get it off of him. But by the time they do, Lim is unconscious. He's convulsing. His arms are flailing. They drag him out, but he is covered from head to toe in horrible second-degree steam burns. And by the time they get him to the hospital, he was either already deceased or deceased right shortly thereafter. It would turn out he didn't actually die from the burns themselves, but the steam burns were so incredibly painful, it was just too much for his heart to handle, and his heart would just shut down. His 32-year-old son would say, "My mother, my sisters, and I are so terribly sad. Our very cheerful father has left us forever."
Unsolved cases that keep me up at night. On January 16, 2014, a group of 4 friends were playing a game of dares. One of them was dared to go into this cornfield that was rumored to be responsible for the many disappearances in the area. The friend agreed, following the rules of the game, and ventured into the cornfield by himself. For what felt like hours had gone by, the 3 friends had lost track of the man and were starting to get worried. Too afraid to go on themselves, they contacted the police, and the police showed up after a while and searched the area. They searched and they didn't find any trace of the guy, but they did find his phone. And after going through his phone, they found the last photo captured before his disappearance.
There's actually a dark, terrifying origins to the Amber Alert. This happened in 1996 in Arlington, Texas. And it was a little girl called Amber Hagerman, who was 9 years old. And she was riding her bike at her grandparents' house along with her brother Ricky. Next to the grandparents' house was a supermarket, which was abandoned. Basically, they were riding their bike there, you know, having fun and all. The little brother decided to go back to the house. So she stayed at the parking lot. That's when a black pull-up truck pulled up to her. A man got out of the truck, grabbed Amber, threw her inside the truck, and he dipped immediately. Now, luckily, a witness was able to, see it happen from his backyard. So he called the cops immediately. The cops showed up pretty fast, bro. Like, within minutes. It was pretty fast. So there was a huge search for Amber all over Texas, basically, hoping that they could find her and see who abducted her. Even with all that happening, bro, like, they still couldn't find her. About 4 days later, there was a man who was walking his dog at midnight.
Even I can look at this photo and I can say, whoa. It put tears in our eyes when we walked in there. It was that obvious.
That is a charge called homicide, felony murder. It is life without parole.
And you said when you found her, she was already believed to be deceased, right? Yeah. So you found the child an hour and a half ago? Yeah. And called your lawyer first, correct? Yeah. Okay.
What you just heard and are about to hear is some of the most extreme, bizarre, and baffling thinking ever caught on camera. A child's life taken in the most sickening way, and for one reason so unthinkable, you'll have a hard time believing it was actually said out loud.
I called my lawyer first thing to ask, what's the next thing I could do. And they said, wait till they're here to call, the police and get that going. Basically, it got to the point where I was waiting so long, I just kind of went ahead and did it anyway. We'll send someone out and we're going to investigate.
After placing the call to emergency services, Seth and his wife, Tatiana Fasari, were escorted to the police station in King County, Michigan, to answer some questions about what happened to their child. It's important to know that both were there voluntarily and not under arrest at the time of these interviews that have never been seen before. The interrogation room is stark with bare walls, only outfitted with uncomfortable chairs and a table. There are no distractions. All of this is intended to make the person in the room uncomfortable and uneasy. That way, they're dependent on the interrogator to provide them comfort with things such as food and water, or even other favors such as cigarettes or compliments. This gives the interrogator leverage. Seth appears to be nervous as he sits and fidgets. Most people are nervous in an interrogation room, so none of this is really surprising. However, given the situation, his behavior is a bit odd.